We have to dissidents, 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 to dissidents. Now here's Russell and Keith. Here's Russell and Keith. It's Russ and Keith. Here's Russ and Keith. Let's go!
All right, everybody, here we are. Welcome and a good afternoon to all you dissidents. This is the Do Dissidents podcast. My name's Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
And as you can see, we are a team of 4 today. I want to start by introducing our guests. First up is Chris Silvera. He is the longest-serving elected principal officer in the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He has been a principal officer for over 30 years, serving as Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local 808 in Long Island City. Chris, thank you so much for joining. Oh, did he just get a phone call and duck out? He's on his phone, so he might have to exit and come back in. But we also have Ike Nahem. Ike is a retired Amtrak engineer involved in various activism, including Cuba Solidarity activism. He's also a writer who can be found at Counterpunch, Dissident Voice, The Black Agenda Report, and elsewhere. And he is also, very importantly, a member of Railroad Workers United. Ike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Chris, you back?
Yes, I'm back.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, bud. All righty. So you guys met Russell, my co-host, at the Railroad Workers Rally outside Grand Central Terminal in New York City. So I'm going to toss to Russell here to kick this interview off. You want to just explain how you met these guys, and then you can get us started.
Yeah, they were doing an amazing, incredible rally outside of Grand Central Terminal that really brought together a lot of representatives from different parts of the labor movement. You had everybody from the airline pilots there to the new Amazon labor union there. Just incredible solidarity. A lot of what was very interesting to me about the rally is it was very anti-democratic party. You know, most of the people there, most of the speakers had something to say about trying to work outside the Democratic Party. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you both on is in this world of kind of left YouTube shows, I don't feel like enough real labor voices are heard. There are not enough people coming on with your background and with your expertise in the labor movement. A lot of people talk about how we have to empower the labor movement. The people they don't really talk to are the labor movement. They don't actually really bring a lot of folks with your expertise on. So the first question I want to ask is, I think particularly a lot of the younger leftists don't realize how involved the union movement once was with the Democratic Party. At one time, I don't think they remember this. The Democratic Party, the unions were the principal fundraisers and foot soldiers for the Democratic Party. Do you all want to speak a little bit to that and why that changed? Because I don't think anybody would think of the unions and the Democratic Party that way today.
Well, I could take a shot at that. I do think that the unions today, which are much weaker politically and every other way, and partly because of their dependence on the two-party system, primarily the Democratic Party, but I still think today they are a lot of the foot soldiers for the Democratic Party mostly. And I think today they still raise a lot of money and waste a lot of union members' dues on contributions to overwhelmingly Democratic candidates. But the roots, but it is true that back in the going back to the 1930s, when you had the tremendous labor upsurge that really led to the organized labor movement in the United States going from 1, 2, 3% in 1932, 33 to 35% of the entire workforce by the late 30s, and a lot of that support inside the labor movement was channeled into an alliance with Roosevelt's Democratic Party that had enacted some reforms that were in the interests of labor. So the possibility of independent labor politics, independent of both big business parties, the last time it was posed concretely would have been out of the 1930s labor struggles.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah. So, you know, in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, you know, certainly you have to do business with government, right? Congress, whatever. But those union leaders at that time had more connection with the membership. The leaders today have more connection with the political class, more so than with the membership. And they serve the political class. They're considered to be the junior partners of the Democratic Party. And so they will subsume the members' will to placate the interests of the Democratic Party. So half the members now are sick and tired of Democrats and Republicans. Even a lot of the people that went with Trump are sick and tired of politics as usual. These people actually, if you presented and could stand up tomorrow, a Labor Party would desert the Democratic Party, they would desert the Republican Party and join the Labor Party. The workers are highly offended by what's going on today.
Well, we are also in, if I can say, a new period, especially with all the conditions that mushroomed in a negative way for the working class during the pandemic. But what Chris is talking about is a phenomena in the working class in terms of its consciousness, but also in broad layers of U.S. society. I mean, the organized working class, but broad layers of U.S. society, because in the case of the labor movement, it's really a case of unrequited love. You know, as much as the union officials and the the leaders of other social movements, progressive social movements, look to the Democratic Party, they generally get kicked in the face, and it's really unrequited love. I agree with Chris that if the unions, which is the one social force in society that has the resources and the potential power to head a independent labor party or independent political action in the interests of working people broadly, in the interests of small business owners, in the interests of family farmers, in the interests of African Americans, in the interests of the most immigrant workers. I do think that would resonate greatly in U.S. society. And we're going to see, I think, in the going into the 2024 elections, which thank God is not going to start. Maybe it's probably already started. I should.
We're in it.
Sadly, but
we're in it. You didn't buy those Trump NFT cards yet? You didn't get yours?
Right. I hope one of the developments will be that we will see more fissures, fractures, divisions under the pressures of what I think is a developing working class upsurge in the United States and other advanced capitalist countries to deal with these horrible conditions of work and pay and inflation and all these other factors.
I mean, I really hope you're right about that, because certainly 2016 was one of those fissuring points, right? And it seemed like that was only going to get worse. But I've written about this a bit and talked about this a bit. It seems like since 2016, a lot of opportunities for change have been shut down. And in that way, the political climate has just kind of been smoothed over in a bad way, right? George Floyd protests, right? People flooded the streets. Black Lives Matter, great. Defund the police. Oh, no, can't do that. Shut that down, right? We thought that the pandemic would be a time to really reevaluate our priorities as a society. Turns out that didn't really happen, right? The 2020 campaign, when you saw Biden and Trump debate, they were literally competing over who was going to do less, right? Moderator, Joe Biden, do you want socialized medicine? Trump, yes, you want socialized medicine. Biden, no, I don't. Or fracking, no, I'm not going to, right? So we seem to be in a paralyzed moment, and I worked a seasonal job at a UPS warehouse, which is a union warehouse. I was only seasonal, so I never got admitted to the union. But what I sensed in that atmosphere was political detachment and despair. And how big an obstacle is that to you guys? Because you guys obviously have a lot of fire in your gut. That's why you were at the rally. You can hear it when you talk. How big an obstacle is that sense of hopelessness and that sense of stalemate, that sense of inertia?
Kilimanjaro.
All right, well, that's good.
It's like climbing. It might not be as bad as Everest, but it's certainly as bad as Kilimanjaro.
Well,
the members. I mean, I give it. I mean, this real strike, what could have been potentially a real strike, and just look at how the leaders of the BLET and the leaders of some of these other unions colluded, right? Because I said this at the thing. We're blaming Biden for implementing this agreement, but you're the one that made this tentative agreement back in September. When they all went down to the White House and had a burger with Nancy Pelosi and, went to see Joe Biden and whomever. And, the leadership, the pressure the entire time was on the union to bow down. Right. And the leadership thinking they're going to gain.
Oops, he must have gotten a phone call. Well, he'll be back in a second.
Well, maybe
go ahead.
Yeah, you want to jump in there?
Point. I mean, it's certainly true, and it's nothing new. The union officialdom, has been having privilege and sinecures and running their unions like businesses for many, many, many decades. This is nothing new, and we've seen the membership, of the unions decline and all of that. Yes, all the things you're describing, Keaton, alienation, there's polarization, there's all kinds of space, but this is the crisis of, the two-party system, and in the context of, shifting relationship of forces internationally. You got to get into whole the more attacks on the working class in the United States is tied to the declining U.S. Positions, economic power, which was totally dominant after World War II, and so on. But all of these things that you're pointing to are true, but there's also, for example, the George Floyd protests. All of these things show the potential for struggle and the potential to move forward. But at the same time, it comes back to the crisis of leadership, the leadership of the so-called Black Lives Matter upsurge. A lot of that was co-opted into the Democratic Party. A lot of that was corrupted. There were agent provocateurs that turned peaceful demonstrations into so-called riots, and maybe we'll hear the full story of that at some point. So this is true, but the labor movement changes that we're seeing is very promising because it can unite people across the lines that the employers and the politicians try to divide us along those lines. It can unite people so we can have common experiences, and that can inspire people. We need examples. The real worker strike, and this is why they moved so hard to quash it and prevent it, even though it wouldn't have lasted more than, a day at most before they put out a court injunction, which is what they've done in the past. But they did not want, in this period when people are questioning the unrelenting pressure on their living standards, on their health access and everything else, an example of workers fighting, and also workers that have social weight. If Starbucks workers, the most low most oppressed layers of the working class can get inspiration, that tells you something. But when railroad workers that are generally considered more or less the elite, even though, we give up a lot for that so-called status, are willing to go into action and use their weight, that shows the power that the working class has.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Right. So I missed some of it because this call knocked me up. But so I think that we are so far away. I think we keep disappointing workers. I think the Starbucks workers are in fact showing a way more tenacity, way more militancy than what's happening in the real industry. There should be a call, and our General President Sean O'Brien, along with Dennis Pierce, who just got voted out, whoever his successor is, and Mr. Hall, I believe his name is, and the BMWE. These unions need to get together and say, listen, we're going to. So right now we spend $60 million on Democratic Party politics and what have you. We need to be telling every worker once a month, we're going to have a meet your congressperson meeting. We're not going on strike. We're coming to Washington, D.C. one day in every month to meet with our congressional leaders to discuss why we have a difficult time giving up 7 lousy sick days in the 21st century in America for a group of workers whose entire workday is outside. Snow, rain, hail, pick a calamity in weather, and we are out in it. And this is what's going to bind the worker back to the union when the worker sees the union taking the actions necessary to defy unjust laws or bills or whatever they choose to call the implementation of this agreement. The workers have to resist. The workers have to say, hell no, I'm going to come and see you once a month, which means once a month the railroad will be shut down, right? And call upon the Congress to say, listen, if you don't want this continual disruption, then you find it inside that building to pass a bill that gives me 7 sick days, or I'm going to F you till thy kingdom come. And I mean, this is how you end up into the point where you start talking about general strikes and what have you, where you say, if you touch them, we all going down. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I hate to bring up January 6th, but I mean, they were pursuing a lie and they were pursuing a con game. But the fact of the matter is sometimes, I would never desecrate Congress, but there are other ways to do this. There's sometimes when you have to take matters into your own hands. This is how we won in the 30s and how we won in the 40s. That's why they then created all these different laws, Taft-Hartley and whatnot, to chain us down, right? You got to defy this program. We cannot just sit here every day. I'm a trackman, and on Metro North we had to go through some hoops, and we finally ended up getting sick days and what have you. But it took having the right to strike, right? And 10 years from now, when they get another presidential emergency board, they're going to implement again, and they won't have any sick days. And 10 years from now, when they do it again, they still won't have any sick days. At some point, you have to say, F this, right? And you got to make that stand.
100%. Look, you mentioned January 6th. Obviously, I agree with the substance behind the George Floyd protest a lot more than I agree with the substance behind the January 6th protest. But if you notice, look at the actions that are now being taken against a lot of those January 6th people. Throwing an obviously mentally ill guy, the guy who, wore the helmet and the face paint, locking him in a cage for 5 years, right? There's a guy in Orange County, lives here, used to own a tattoo shop, right? He was one of the Oath Keepers. They're talking about trying him for sedition and locking him up for, God knows how long. I mean, they're throwing the book at these people in a way that I don't think is fair, honestly. I don't think the guy in face paint should be locked in a cage for 5 years. I just don't. All right. But this is part of the smoothing over of the unrest, right? I mean, it happens on the left. It also happens on the right, right? They're trying to make an example of these people. We're not going to tolerate movement outside the system. And that's what I think we're up against, really.
Right, but you
Well,
can still have movement
then-
within the system, right?
Well,
Sure.
I don't think it's a
An
question
earthquake-
of. I think it's important from the point of view of what advances the interests of working people. You know, I understand your point, Keaton, and obviously this government tries to use its repressive agencies in ways that set precedents by going
Right.
against people sometimes that are particularly odious, but we don't need to identify in any way, you know, with, you know, what we're talking about.
No, I'm not talking about identifying with them. I'm just
No, I
talking about
understand.
exactly what you said, how the system makes examples of quote unquote radicals, whether they're left or right. That's all I'm saying there.
Well, but what I'm talking about is what we need to do to rebuild the labor movement, to get to the point where we can pose the questions that Chris is posing, only a much stronger labor movement than what we have now, because we have been so weakened by this dependency on the two-party system, by this separation between the union bureaucracies and the rank and file workers, all the things that Chris has spoken about. But to rebuild that movement, it can only come out of struggle, and it has to be mass struggle. It'll take the form of strikes. It'll take the form of mass demonstrations. And we need to keep the moral high ground in terms of our discipline and so on. Personally, I think the politicians in Washington know very well what is percolating. What will affect them is not sort of lobbying and stuff like that. What will affect them is when they see, you know, united struggles by working people that reach out to the community, that reach out and show the power of the labor movement and to unite the whole society that's alienated. You know, I remember during the Amazon struggle that led to the big victory in Staten Island, I remember a poll where I read where they said that something like 69% of people that voted for Trump supported the struggle to unionize Amazon.
Right.
I mean, that tells you that, you know, the lesser evil, a lot of people, they have their own reasons. To me, I don't think it's any more bogus to have illusions in some demagogue like Trump than it is to have illusions in somebody with Biden's record. You know,
I think it's far less bogus, to be honest with you. Far less bogus.
It's an illusion either way you look at it. And our job is to break down illusions, not to adapt to them.
Right. So let me be very clear. I did not want our workers to assault the Capitol and storm the building or and smear feces or do any of those things. But
our continued existence as a YouTube channel thanks you.
Yeah,
right.
sure, exactly.
I would never do that. But the worker has to exercise disciplined actions to resist injustice.
Yeah.
And Dr. King was very clear that an unjust law must be resisted, right? So the worker can't strike, but we certainly have the right to go and visit our congressional leaders, right? And the unions between the AFL, Change to Win, and the collective of all these unions have enough money to fly them in, bus them in, and those close enough can drive in to put 50,000 union workers in Washington, D.C. one day every month, right?
Well,
Which
even
means
once
that-
every 2 months or 3 months, I'd like to see a one call for all the unions to descend on Washington, D.C. and demand a whole series of demands. I would love that idea. That's exactly what we need.
Okay, so that call is actually going out in the new year. We're calling for a million worker march in 2024, but those workers need sick days right now, right?
Yeah.
So if you start to have congressional action, so and you can bring 30,000 union people into Washington D.C., right? So they're going to camp out on the steps of Congress. Their fancy guys are going to go into the building and lobby as they do, but they're going to see that. But what happens that day is no trains moved, right?
Right.
Which means that they just lost $2 billion. I'm
Right.
not on strike. I'm just
Right.
going to see my congressional leader. The next month, I'm going to do the same thing. And the following month, I'm going to do the same thing until you figure out that you're going to give me at least 7 sick days. And then we will have a smooth operation. So what they did with this thing was, and you watch what happened, they count votes. They knew those 7 sick days were going to fail. That's why they split the 7 sick days off from go back to work, right?
Right.
And that's why they made go back to work the first one they voted on, and the sick days be the second one that they voted on, right? And so everybody can throw up their hands, Democrats. Oh,
Yeah.
I did my thing. And
was a
Joe
flim
Manchin
flam.
says, well, you always knew I was a scumbag. And the 3 Republicans who have a lot of railroad workers in their states say, well, I voted for it and I'm off the hook, right? But the workers still don't have 7 sick days. And in 2021, in a post-pandemic America, it is a crime for any worker to not have sick days. And I'm telling you what's failing people is that they're going to, like New York City has a law that gives workers 5 sick days, right? Well, if you start depending on the politician to give you what you need, then I don't need to pay union dues, and it becomes the movement to destroy the labor movement. Just worry about me, take care of the Democratic Party, take care of the Republican Party, and we'll take care of you, right? When at the end of the day, both parties are taking the workers straight off of a cliff, right? Because these guys are pulling trains that's 2 miles long.
Yeah.
2 miles long. And this is not lumber that if it derails, it just splatters across the street. This is fuel that can burn down a whole town. This is chlorine that could suffocate everybody for 100 miles. This is serious business. So to say that we're going to wait, that we're having a call for a Million Worker March in October of 2024, but this is immediate. And if our leaders, our General President Sean O'Brien, and other unions all say, hey, listen, we're going to contribute to this fund. And the Teamsters have $350 million for strike benefits. What does it cost to fly in 50,000 people into Washington, D.C.? It certainly ain't $60 million. Right. And they could do this every month, right? Because these guys make money. So if a ticket is $400, you can say, yo, you give 2, and the union is going to give 2, and you're going to come here. And if you attack the worker by saying you're going to shut them down or lock them out, then that's when the general strike comes into being. But if you're going to be, we stop. We done talking. We have waited long enough. The workers have waited long enough. And when you have to be out there shoveling snow in the middle of winter, cleaning switches in minus 13 degrees weather and all this kind of, in Montana right now, there's a railroad guy on a track doing some work in God knows some ungodly weather, right? And tomorrow he or she will not have a sick day if they get ill. That's unconscionable in 21st century post-pandemic America. Sorry to drone on like that. But it's
no, not at all.
No, not at all. That's what you're on for. We want to hear that perspective. We want to hear that point of view. Now, I want to ask y'all, you did have some representatives of the new up-and-coming unions at the rally at Grand Central Terminal. What's being done to reach, if anything, to form alliances with the Amazon labor union, with the striking workers at Starbucks? Is anything being done to bring in that new generation, these new unions, with the older line unions like the Teamsters and the rail workers?
Well, there's a lot of turbulence in the labor movement now. It was reflected in the fact that the new leadership that was elected in the Teamsters, that had its roots in some of the more militant oppositional caucuses over many years that fought in the Teamsters. The ouster of Dennis Pierce from the BLET, the union I was a member of when I was working, reflected the dissatisfaction of the rank and file with his role in forcing down this contract down people's throats. So there is a lot of turbulence. There is a lot of pressure. I've attended rallies for the Amazon workers in Staten Island at the big warehouse, where all kinds of union officials, including some, I won't name any names, but Chris will know what I'm talking about, that are very conservative and never rock the boat and really servile, but who are out there rah, 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 raising the red flag. It shows the pressure that they're under. And I think that will continue within up and down the labor movement. And these alliances will be forged in struggle. The Amazon Labor Union is reaching out. Starbucks workers, a lot of those links are being made. I went to the Labor Notes conference in Chicago last summer. 4,000 people showed up, very young, really open, wanted to read labor history. And there's an inspiring history there that I think can inspire people. And then a lot of the workers, the BLET example, I'm sorry, I'll probably drone on a little bit too long also, but
not at all.
He, the BLET, the engineers, voted, I think, by 52% in favor of the rotten contract, but they were holding their nose and voting. A lot of people that voted for it, although a majority, if you add all the craft unions together, a small majority voted it down, but enough, and everybody hated it. But a lot of times, a lot of workers don't want to go into a battle if they think the people leading them in the battle are not going to see it through to the end.
That's exactly right.
They still ousted Pierce because he tried to oversell it and say it was a good thing. And they went along with that flim flam that Chris referred to with that vote, which they knew had to get 60. These alliances will be formed, I'm sure. And all of that turbulence is going to lead to, I think, a rejuvenation in labor's ranks. But it's not going to be easy because the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they got that shell game that they got going has been very good for them and for their system. But I think if we challenge it intelligently and effectively and with discipline and with an inspiring message, I think we can cause a lot of cracks in that armor that will open up the door for the organization of the workers. If we can get our numbers back up to 20, 30, 40% of the working class, this country will change completely.
So let me just give a little bit, because, local 808, we had this battle around sick days back in 90-something, 96, whatever that was.
And there's Metro North?
Yeah. And we had to go through a presidential emergency board.
Wait, just 1 second, Chris. For anyone who's not from the region who doesn't know, that's the railroad out of New York that serves the upstate region, Connecticut.
Yes.
Yeah, the tri-state area.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So we had then a big labor leader, Sonny Hall. Sonny Hall actually tried to get Ron Terry to trustee Teamsters Local 808. And most of the craft unions, most of the unions of Metro North actually deserted Local 808. And we were the ones that went to the bitter end. We were the ones that struck the railroad that ended up granting everybody the sick days that they have now and the enhanced vacation schedule that they have now, right? And because they didn't believe, because the leaders don't believe. And to Ike's point, the leaders, the rank and file is still waiting for some leaders who believe it is possible, And so here's a group of people who say yes to the contract, knowing it sucks, and then kicks Dennis Pierce out, as opposed to saying no to the contract and then kicking Dennis Pierce out. That would have been the real right thing to do, right? But they took the money and ran and thinking we're going to do this again. And everybody keeps saying next time, next time, next time. It's, it's years between presidential emergency boards. You see, because people go 10, 15 years before you get another presidential emergency board. So when you get that opportunity to play in the Super Bowl, right, which I call that the Super Bowl, you got to give it all you got. You just cannot You got to leave everything on the battlefield. And I believe that there's still room to get those sick days if people step up and start to take militant action. But I want to address this Amazon Starbucks thing. The Amazon Starbucks guys are going to a lot of situations in a lot of places and listening to a lot of people who have never negotiated a contract, who have never gotten anybody a sick day, have never gotten anybody a pension, and they're listening to so-called leftist talk. I've read Marx, I've read some of Lenin, I've read some, Trotsky, different guys like that. But I also am very pragmatic to the world I live in. So I'm not going to go and attack Fort Bragg with a BB gun, right?
Right.
The Amazon labor union, if the Teamsters right now are in a whole building process to try to take on Amazon. So here's what I'm going to tell you right now. Amazon is too big for the Teamsters by themselves. They're going to have to carve up Amazon and deliver some work, I'm just going to make up the, RWSDU, you take these guys. Teamsters are going to take those guys. You're going to take those guys. You're going to take those guys.
Now, do you mean based on region or what they do within Amazon?
It could very well be regional. It could very well be based on the type of work they do. I mean, that's something to be figured out, right? But I don't think any one union can just jump on Amazon and win that wrestling match right there.
Right.
If you look at what happened after Staten Island, right? So we reveal in this victory in Staten Island, right across the street, Bernie Sanders came, AOC came, Sarah Nelson came, all kind of people came. They lost, right? They went up to Albany. They lost. There was some guys used to be Teamsters that formed an independent union, and they went up to some spot in Jersey. They lost. Bessemer, they lost twice, right? So there's something that's keeping these workers from doing what they themselves know they're supposed to do, right? They know they're supposed to be in a union, but there's something that's not being communicated. And Chris Smalls and that group,
Yep.
they're not going, and I've been marching with them from day one. They're not going to win this on their own. They don't have the resources to win this on their own. And that's just reality.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the thing in their way is part of what we talked about, half hour ago. It's that Mount Kilimanjaro, as you said, right?
Yeah.
It's just that overall sense of stalemate, I think, is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But Russell, you had a question. It's number 6 on our cheat sheet there that I want you to speak to before we let these guys go, because it's important and you were at the rally. And so why don't you take that and then we'll go from there.
This is a big question. I'm really fascinated to get both your perspectives on. We talk a lot on this show about a tension between what we often call an economic left and an identitarian left. And very often we've been skeptical of identity, what we call identity politics, because of the way very often it's used to manipulate the working class to create divisions. Mm-hmm. Now, I saw that a bit at the rally because a lot of the old school guys like y'all, you're talking about race issues and Malcolm and that kind of thing. Then somebody came on much later who started getting into a more identitarian, less class-oriented view, and they were kind of shunted off pretty quickly. I don't want to call anybody out. So
right.
Very, very vague about it.
Yeah.
But that struck me that the people running that rally did not want that rhetoric. That's how it struck me. Like, they want to bring everybody together, and including what you were talking about before, that, hey man, a lot of these Trump people thought Amazon should unionize. So do you want to get into these landmines of culture really when you're trying to bring together? A lot of these people might be Republicans. They might be Trump voters.
Yeah.
Do you not want them? So that's a question I would love to ask you. Do you see a tension between those things? And particularly, is there a generational divide in regards to this? Do you see this more with the younger unions, which that's where it came from when I was at GCT?
Yeah,
Grand Central.
There's always a tension between, older guys, younger guys, whatever. But the American worker is class unconscious. Mm-hmm. They have no idea. You start telling them about Lenin, they've been taught from childhood, shut your brain down. You do not want to hear anything. And I give you some personal experience. I was a steward at the time, and I'm on a bus before I took over the local, and before we took over the local, excuse me. And we're talking about, man, we should have sick days. We should have this. We should have that. And a guy named Jack Daniels, dear friend, Jack Daniels says, I can't call him that anymore because he went to rehab. But I don't remember his name. And Jack Daniels says, hey, Chris, that's a good idea, man. But that's communism. There was a chill in the bus. The conversation died right there. So I talk to people about outcomes because we can agree to outcomes if we don't put labels on them. So if you go to people and say, should everybody have free medical care in the country? They'll say yes. Right. If you tell them it's socialized medicine, they'll say no, right? They don't have a concept that Social Security is a socialistic thing, that Medicare is a socialistic thing. So why use those buzzwords, right, to kill the movement when you could just simply talk about the outcomes that we're looking to achieve? So you have these people who are steeped in Marx and steeped in Lenin and steeped in Trotsky and Mao and whatnot, but they have never spoken to someone that have never read one of those books. And if you ain't never read one of them books, they ain't even talking to you either, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I talk to, I bet half of my members on Metro North are Trumpsters. But I can talk to them about issues that affect them without putting a label on it. Then I go to them. I mean, right here in Brewster, there's not even one black guy in that shop. And I can talk to them and I'll say, hey, Sleepy Joe. And by just calling him Sleepy Joe, I can continue a conversation that they would have shut down if I said President Biden. You understand the point I'm saying?
Right. They know that's why I love Let's Go Brandon. I love Let's Go Brandon. I say it a lot.
I make jokes with them about
I'm all for it.
Because you have to get them to understand this is the outcome we're looking for.
I think the way that workers will be won over and will, I worked in industry, in the railroad industry, in freight and in passenger. I was also a track person in the Washington Metro system. So I did all the things that Chris was talking about before, sweeping out the switches and all that. And, in my 30 years of, observing and participating and having discussions all over the place, because in the cab of a locomotive, sometimes, you're getting into some pretty deep discussions with your coworkers. Mm-hmm. I would say that consciousness is very uneven and very contradictory and always subject to all the pressures of capitalist society on them to atomize them and for politics to be shunted into that two-party shell game. But at the same time, I'm totally convinced that the way that workers will overcome these divisions that the employers and the bosses try to impose on us based on race, job status, immigration status, sex, gender, all the things that in the absence of a fighting labor movement that could unite the working class, liberal and conservative and reactionary politicians use these wedge issues and these identity issues. These really originate more with the right and the liberals, and all this virtue signaling and stuff like that. So the way that those things will be overcome is not, I don't think, I wouldn't counterpose. I'm not an identity person, but everybody has their identity and everybody has their history and everybody has their experiences. And when they're in struggle, that is how they will overcome that. You know, I worked in an industry and I wrote a long essay on this about racism in the rail industry, a review of the book, Brotherhoods of Color, that people can look up in Dissident Voice. And, you know, the use of racism to divide. The Railway Labor Act created these white job trusts. How was that overcome? I worked with the first engineers, black engineers, that were not hired until 1969, you know, because of the civil rights movement. And those guys put up with a lot of, I can't say the S word, I guess, you know, in their days. But eventually, and through struggle, that when people were working together, I thought it's the same thing when I worked in a United Auto Workers plant. I was part of helping to organize shipyard workers in Newport News, Virginia. I remember one white worker that had a Confederate flag tattooed on his arm, and he was pro-union. And then the next I heard about him, he had spent a lot of money and was in a lot of pain getting that damn thing scrubbed off because he was pro-union and he worked with his black co-workers were pro-union. So these things are overcome in struggle and common experience.
Right.
Not
Absolutely.
abstract, academic,
Right.
ideological.
Exactly.
Believe me,
That's right.
I don't
That's
know
right.
how steeped I am, but I've read a lot of Marx too, and I consider myself a socialist. I don't think it hurts the argument. You know, you should avoid jargon and you should avoid superficial arguments, but you know, you should also tell the truth about the class relations in society and who benefits and all of those questions. And I think one thing about the young generation today, they're grasping towards getting a class politics with this identity stuff. But if they can see the limits of that and they can have people that can explain how to win those things and like the whole working class, I think they'll increase their consciousness, so to speak, as we used to say in the 60s, instead of woke.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well, those are two perfect answers. I got to say, Chris is making me nervous because I know we're getting some really nasty weather up in our neck of the woods, and you're in the car, and that sky is looking worse and worse out the window behind you. So I want to wrap in just a minute so you can get home safe. But before we wrap, do you guys want to let people know where they could stay in touch with you, where they can find you at, where they can follow your work? Chris, go first since you got to get home before you get stuck. I see the lights on in your car now. If you need to jump, I'm about 45 minutes away. So if I kill your battery, just text me. I'll come get you.
Just got to look up Teamsters Local 808 and connect with me. I'm not really into that social media stuff. I've not been that fancy yet, but you know, they reach out to Local 808. I'll reach back to them. You know what I'm saying? But you know, we just continue to keep our foot on the pedal, man, and I keep talking to these younger workers, you know, like Local 808, you know, we just have endeavored now, man, to just double down in 2023 to get some of these younger workers to begin to understand, to come out to meetings more, to participate. So we're starting to give out, if you saw our guys at the rally, a lot of them have these hoodies on. So we've been giving out hoodies over the winter. Every time they come out to something, we design a different hoodie and give it out so that when they go back, the other guys go, hey, where'd you get that? Hey, we want to buy one of those. No, they're not for sale. You have to earn one of these, you know. And It's starting to work, and we're starting to pull some of them into coming out and seeing and hearing from people like Ike and hearing from other people from the left and, you know, from the center. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the working class is not monolithic. You know, people talk about the black working class, the white working class. Listen, man, catching hell is catching hell. I don't care what color you are. You know what I'm saying? So I've never understood, and I talk to my members about this all the time, about this theoretical divide that exists. You know, that we just have to keep pushing through. You know, what Ike is doing real work out there. Russell, I heard you doing some stuff. I'd certainly like to get some exposure to it. You know, so we just have to keep pushing. We do a YouTube, a Facebook Live thing with a brother out of Philadelphia, Richard Hooker Jr., who is a young Teamster who just took over a local down in Philadelphia. And, just trying to help them. I mean, as a senior guy, I'm trying to just impart to them my experiences and I'm trying to steal youth from them, their youthful energy.
Right.
Ike, go ahead.
Well, thanks again for having us on, and it was great to see that Chris is working his locals in. We're neighbors. I have an apartment on beautiful Roosevelt Island, and
come over, let's have lunch.
I would love it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to plug in the time I have left. The Railroad Workers United, which is a group that I belong to, that's trying to unite all the different crafts, the track persons and the machinists and the conductors and the engineers into one industrial union. They have a great website. I would ask people to Google it. As was mentioned, I'm also very active in the fight to stop the brutal U.S. blockade of Cuba and in Cuba solidarity work. And if people would like to look at our great website, us-cubanormalization.org, that would be great. And I'd just like to end in terms of the theme that we're developing today of really independent working class action and rebuilding the labor movement. I like to quote from the great Malcolm X, who's behind me here on my wall, where he said the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is the Republicans stick the knife in your back 6 inches and the Democrats pull it out 1. He says even if they pulled it out all the way, it would still be leaving a wound. And I think the truth is that today in the labor movement, the beginning, the first baby step towards solving the tremendous problems that the American working class faces is to get some political independence and stop relying on this two-party shell game to solve our problems, because it ain't going to happen. Because as Malcolm said also, a chicken cannot produce a duck egg. Thank you.
All right. Before you guys go, I just have to put Robert's quote, because Robert was at that Grand Central rally and he helped us film. So I want to give him a chance to say hi. He says that was a great rally for the workers at Grand Central. Robert was there with Russell helping us get that footage. So I just want to put his comments up for a moment.
Did he film the entire rally?
We only had about 10 minutes worth. We'll share that video with you guys.
I actually have a lot more than that. I've been meaning to cut together an extended version. I filmed, I think, every speaker.
The whole rally was filmed.
Well, we'll send it.
I can do that for you.
The whole rally was filmed on Status Coup.
Yeah, they did a good job.
All right. Yeah.
They did the whole thing.
Right, but I've been trying to reach that guy so that, because I wanted to chop that up so we could put it up on our stuff, Yeah,
I'd like to edit it too if I could.
Yeah, they never streamed it. They never threw it up.
They did stream it
on YouTube.
Yeah, well, it is on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
So yeah,
I'm gonna go look again. I might have went too early.
I might. I'll message you guys when we're offline. I'll see if I can put you guys in touch. Not that I know them, but I have contacted them in the past. So they've responded to my emails in the past. So maybe they will, and I'll put them in touch with you. They'll get you that footage.
Okay, great, man. Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All righty, great. Well, thank you, Chris. Please make it home safe. You're making me nervous.
And if not, I'll get it to you, Chris.
There you go. Cool.
Thanks.
I have my own version. No problem.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
Hey, thank you, guys, man. Enjoy your holiday season, man. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Stay safe, and watch out for these the 333 threat that they say is going around this season. Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
Well. Thank you guys so much. We'll be in touch for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great having you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys. All righty. Well, that concludes that interview. We've done a lot of interviews, but that was, I think, one of our best. That was one of the coolest ones.
I was very proud to host them. I was very proud
great
to have them on.
Absolutely. That was a very, very fun time, and I hope you guys all enjoyed that. We have another segment that we are going to get to, but I do want to encourage people who are watching to like and subscribe to this channel. You can hit us up at patreon.com/DoDissidents. We want to welcome our newest patron. His name is Matt. W, he signed up yesterday, I believe it was, Matt. So thank you. You are on the scroll here. You are on the shout out list. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. A little late with our patron scroll today because of that interview. But we were, like I said, very, very happy that we could do that. And it's funny because I'm about the midway point between them because Ike is from Sullivan County. He's in Sullivan County now. And then Chris is out in Brewster near the Connecticut border. They're both about 40 miles from me in the opposite direction, and we are getting nasty, nasty weather up here. So that's why the sky behind Chris was just getting nastier and nastier. Like, man, we gotta.
I know. Well, it was very cool of him because he was just he
was
wasn't
great.
He was just jamming. No,
Yeah.
I mean they're both such incredible examples of the real labor movement, which in this space, that's what I started with. Nobody's platforming the actual labor movement.
Yeah, right.
This is the actual labor movement. These are the guys who have been in the trenches for decades. This is the actual people you're theoretically talking about. You reach out to them a little. You can have them on, and nobody does. Nobody does. I've never seen these guys on anybody's show. I'm not saying nobody's had them on, but they certainly are not invited a lot. Not like they should be. Everybody wants to talk about labor issues, but that's not who anyone invites.
Yeah, and I thought the answer, I mean, we're going to clip that. We're going to clip the interview as a whole, but we're going to clip this separate answer about the question about identity politics versus class politics.
That was great.
And the intersection
that
of
was
that, because
great.
those were both perfect answers.
We're all over here like schmucks talking about the theory.
Right, exactly.
There are the people on the ground saying, hey, yeah, that's not productive.
Right.
If saying Sleepy Joe is going to bring these people to me, if talking about all this theoretical, abstract, academic jargon is going to alienate people, why? Why?
As soon as the "Let's Go Brandon" shit dropped, I loved it. I even wrote an article about it. That's how passionate I felt. I'm like, this is it. This is it. This is exactly the mantra we all need to be chanting here. All right. Well, pardon me. Let's do some international news, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right. So, some other
lighter
news happened.
Subject, and listen, you bunch of mooks. I know you took this opportunity to not have to super chat because you knew we were busy with our guests. This is like when the kids act up because they know you have guests over. You
Don't
can't
think
really
we forgot.
reprimand them. Don't think we forgot. Just because we were distracted with our honored guests does not mean you are relieved of your responsibilities. So cough it up.
Exactly. Super chats help keep the show afloat. President Volodymyr Zelensky was in town. He went to Washington, D.C. yesterday, and he met with Sleepy Joe Brandon before addressing Congress at 7:30 p.m. And, the speech itself was fairly boilerplate. We're going to read excerpts from it just because it took so long. It was only about 8 minutes worth of content with like 17 minutes worth of seal clapping and ovations and this and that. Yes. So we have some clips from it.
It would say like, yes, empty wallets, give more money, my people.
Then 5 minutes of clapping, exactly. So
we are
I am going
to turn your nation upside down like drunk.
Yeah, right.
And
exactly.
turn out pockets.
I am going to play a little bit of footage from his introduction, him approaching the podium, because this was a hot mic moment that I thought was a little awkward. So I'm just going to play this because I think this is noteworthy.
Yekshima, my name is Borat. I like you. I like sex. It's nice.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird. I mean, I don't know.
See?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she seemed to appreciate it though.
Yeah, no, she took it to heart. She gave exactly.
Get spoken to that way a lot these days.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Beyond that, we have just some quotes that we're going to read here up on the screen. Like I said, you could pretty much divide the speech into three main points. The three main points were: 1, it's an honor to be here; 2, thank you for all the money so far; and 3, we need more money. That was basically it. Those are the three main points. There was nothing at all remarkable about the speech, nothing surprising. You really didn't even have to watch it to know what it was going to be. But just to do our due diligence, as they say, we'll read a few excerpts here just for some context. This battle cannot be frozen or postponed. It cannot be ignored, hoping that the ocean or something else will provide a protection. From the United States to China, from Europe to Latin America, and from Africa to Australia, the world is too interconnected and interdependent to allow someone to stay aside and at the same time to feel safe when such a battle continues. This is why it's really important to say not overthrow the Peruvian government, right?
Yeah, because nobody can feel safe when that's happening.
Yeah, nobody can feel safe when the democratically elected leader of Peru meets with the U.S. ambassador 2 days before he is ousted for no reason and put in prison without trial. Right? Nobody is safe as long as that can go on. So that's a good point that he made there. It's a little curious he didn't cite that example, being how current it is. But, that was a great point.
Hey, nice democratically elected government you got here. Be a shame if something happened to it.
Yeah, right, exactly. We can't just sit by and let that happen, right? We have artillery, yes, thank you. We have it. Is it enough? Honestly, not really. To ensure Bakhmut, which is a city, I guess, that he talked about in the speech about how it's a city of 70,000 people that's been reduced to a basic ghost town. Because it's been utterly decimated, which is why, once again, we need a peace deal, right? People act like we are not against the people of Ukraine. We want the people of Ukraine to live. That's why we want a peace deal, so that this insanity and this bloodshed ends, right? To ensure that is not just a stronghold, that it holds back the Russian army, but for the Russian army to completely pull out, more cannons and shells are needed. We're sending them what's called a Patriot battery, which I had not heard of until yesterday. But a Patriot battery is a pretty intense package of shit, really long-range missiles, things like that. They go for about $1 billion a pop. And, he's ordering, a few dozen of those,
Free college, free schmollege.
Right.
We don't need that in this country.
For 9 Patriot batteries, 9 Patriot batteries, we could send every person in America to a 2-year college tuition free, everyone who wants to go. But that costs 9 Patriot batteries, so we can't afford it. How are we going to pay for it?
Come on. Those people, they need to become familiar with their bootstraps and pulling on them.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. Financial assistance is also critically important, and I would like to thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for both financial packages you have already provided us with and the ones you may be willing to decide on. Like more. Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way. Yeah, I'm sure of that. So those were some of the excerpts.
Yeah, well, that's why they were very resistant to having all the spending tracked, because it's being used in the most responsible way.
Right. It's insulting. How insulting for you to ask.
How insulting to suggest that the country that was ranked the most deeply corrupt in Europe before the United States flooded it with billions of dollars would be asked to keep accounts.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it's being led by a guy who turned up in the Pandora Papers.
All right. So that was the crux of his speech there, distilled into 3 main points. Our great friends, our great leaders over at the House Progressive Caucus put out a statement in response to Zelensky's speech. The voices of peace and justice and sanity, CPC Chair Representative Jayapal and CPC Chair Emeritus and Peace and Security Task Force Chair Barbara Lee, the lone vote against the Afghanistan war in the House, right? The voice of peace, so-called Barbara Lee, respond to President Zelensky's speech to Congress tonight. Let's see what they had to say here. Representative Pramila Jayapal, chair of the CPC, and Barbara Lee issued the following statement. Tonight, President Zelensky demonstrated the same bravery and defense of democracy that has rallied the United States and the world to his and the Ukrainian people's side in the 10 months since Russia's brutal, unjust, illegal invasion. Alongside President Biden, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, and our colleagues, we were pleased to welcome him to Washington and are proud to continue Democrats' support of the Ukrainian people's fight for sovereignty and democracy. We expect strong support from progressives for aid for Ukraine included in the year-end spending agreement. Our commitment to the Ukrainian people, in accordance with our progressive values for peace, diplomacy, and human rights around the world, will not wane. Lovely
Yeah.
take there from the
Yeah.
worthless cowards at the CPC. How surprising.
Why do they even have a caucus? I don't understand. What's the purpose of it?
Yeah.
To claim that there's some kind of progressive movement in the Democratic Party? I mean, is it just there to sheepdog people? Like, what's it there for? They don't do anything. They don't actually stick to any principles or hold up any legislation. Why are they there? Helps you sleep at night? Is it your own narcissism? You just can't think. You know, in the end, Pelosi is an honest actor. Pelosi is like, listen, I'm doing this here insider training, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm gonna make all these crazy option bets that could only pay off if you were trading on inside information, and you're not gonna do shit. That's honest. She's as they say, stabbing you in the front.
Right.
She's stabbing you in the front, right? She's making it very clear that I am using my position to enrich myself, and there's not a damn thing you fucking peasants can do about it.
Yeah.
That's
well
honest. That's honest. I prefer her to Jayapal and her mealy-mouthed, well, we're taking a leap of faith bullshit. No,
yeah.
it's that they showed you pictures of your nephew at his private school, and you voted the way you had to.
I mean, you go to that joke a lot. I don't think it's even necessary to go there, because I think it's even worse than that. I think there's just no room for. No, I know you're just joking, but what I'm saying is there's just no tolerance for dissent within this party anymore. None. You know,
sure.
They are averse to nonconformity. They are the same as the liberals in that way. The progressives, even the DSA members in Congress, they are all the same in that once there is a party line, anything outside of that is verboten. You're just not allowed to go there. And you would think, judging from Pelosi and Harris and Biden's treatment of Zelensky yesterday and the so-called progressive caucus's treatment, you would think there's no one in Washington, D.C. who has a dissenting view on the Russia-Ukraine war, but you would be wrong, because there were some Republicans, and I should say there are some Republicans, some right-wingers, who are actually seeing pretty clear-eyed about this. All right? Yep. Republicans Doug Massey, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley, and Mike Lee decided not to attend the speech last night. They boycotted it. Good for them. Good for them. I have two more people who I want to congratulate from the bottom of my heart, and that is Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, seen here sitting down, not standing up, while all of the other bird brains in Congress were standing up every 5 seconds for this guy, who, we will get into this in a few minutes, just a month ago tried to convince the world that a Russian missile hit Poland, which would have baited the world into a potentially nuclear war.
Right.
That could have potentially gotten millions of people killed. We will come back to that. We're not done with that. Okay? They sat down. They did not stand up. All right? Good on them. Good on them. Yes, coddler over here, everybody. I'm coddling Matt Gaetz. I'm coddling Lauren Boebert. I'm coddling them all. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. Come at me. Happy to coddle them, because they're 100% right here. And it has to be said, because all the people on the left like us are all in despair. Oh, who do we turn to? You know who you turn to? Fucking Matt Gaetz, fucking Lauren Boebert, fucking Josh Hawley. If they're right on this issue, give them some fucking props for it. Give it up. They're doing what nobody in this useless Democratic Party would ever have the balls to do, including Bernie Sanders. None of them would ever sit down on their hands while all the other fucking brainwashed morons are standing up, cheering on the end of the world. So give it up. Don't worry. I don't care. Oh, yeah, okay, they're wrong on a bunch of other shit. Who gives a fuck? Coddle away, I say. Coddle away. That's what has to happen. And look what happened on here. Let's read. Let's read a bit here. The treatment they got on Elon Musk's Twitter from Richie Torres, who's probably in the room standing up. He was probably standing up, sitting down, 50,000 times last night. Tucker Carlson, Lauren Boebert, and Matt Gaetz stand with Putin. Most of America stands with Zelensky, right? I mean, just look at all of this. Meghan McCain, no surprise here. Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz are an embarrassment. All right, Adam Kinzinger, the never-Trumper. Couldn't imagine looking at myself in the mirror if I were Matt Gaetz or Lauren Boebert. No, you can look at yourself in the mirror. You'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror when a mushroom cloud goes off and swallows everybody in this fucking world. I hope there's a mirror handy in the 10 seconds you have before it swallows you up. Oh, they smugly sat on their hands while history was made and a real hero addressed us. Imagine caring more about performance art than actual human lives. No. You're the one who cares more about performance art than actual human lives. It's not even close. Not even close. Here, no lie with shitlib Brian Taylor Cohen, Lauren Boebert, and Matt Gaetz sitting and scrolling on their phones while President Zelensky gives a rousing speech that was literally predictable from line 1 to line last. Literally, every single line of that speech, I knew what was going to happen. I didn't even have to hear it. I didn't watch it until this morning. I read it before I watched it. Because like I said, it was 8 minutes worth of boilerplate content separated by 20 minutes of, So there you go. There's the treatment.
Well, in a twist, they did focus in on their cell phone screens, and it turned out that Getz and Boebert were sexting each other.
Yeah, that's why they were sitting so close.
That's why they were sitting so close. There was more going on there than meets the eye. But nonetheless, they didn't stand up. So you have to give them some credit for that. I was watching a montage today that somebody put together of media fails. And in one of the sections, I think it was about how they claimed for a minute there that there were 7.5 missing hours from the phone calls in the Trump White House on January 6th. Turned out not to be true. Like, this was all like these stories that the media pumped up that turned out to be false. And, they showed these media commentators, and basically they're paid to make the country crazy. There are these commentators who are just the MAGA Republicans. They are anti-democracy. They are evil, literally using these kinds of Judeo-Christian kind of moral framings. They are evil, literally saying evil. And, that occurred to me when we were talking to Ike and Chris, like, how can you, that is part of what gets in the way of building a unified workers' movement. And so you look at this, it's very hard for people to give credit to Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert because they've been so primed to think in these Monarchian terms about politics, right? There are no grays, there are no alliances, there are no, I agree with you on 10%, but we'll work together on that 10%. Not except when it comes to shitlib kind of priorities like war, cutting taxes for rich people, subsidies for corporations. That it warms their heart when they see a ghoul like Liz Cheney working together with an Adam Kinzinger on a piece of that kind of bipartisanship they like. But this kind of thing, no. And it's really I always come back to that media, because when you talk to these people, all of their narratives, all of their takes, all of their framing are exactly what you see these people tell them to think. Like it is the source of all their opinions.
Absolutely. And what I'm saying is that people like us are taking a black pill over this, thinking that we're voices crying in the wilderness. We're not. There are people in Congress who are getting this right. They're just not they're not on the side that we, for most of our lives, thought was our side. They happen to be in the Republican Party. Same is true in the media, right? You would think no one in the media sees what's going on. That's not true either. Tucker Carlson had Tulsi Gabbard and Glenn Greenwald on to talk about this last night.
All right.
Anderson Cooper had Hillary Clinton. Okay. So you tell me which network is doing a better job covering this, CNN or the Right Wing Network? The Right Wing Network, who had Tulsi and Greenwald on. We're not going to play the Tulsi bit, but we are going to take a look at this Tucker and Glenn Greenwald clip. Apologies. Let's take a look.
I just want to say Tucker probably had the funniest. Like, this actually got a laugh from me out loud, because I saw not this, but I saw his little monologue about it. And he goes, he came to address Congress in a gym suit. So we had somebody who looked like the owner of a strip club coming to Congress and asking for money.
Yeah.
That was a pretty funny line.
All in singles. Want it all in singles. Yeah.
Well, as an independent journalist, he joins us tonight with Reaction. Glenn, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, there's so many levels to this. One is just the human level, where the gall of this guy to come in, demand money, pretend it's not charity, and no one watching explains what the point of the money is. What is the goal here? Do you know? I don't.
I don't either. I know that I've been asking since February, in what conceivable way will the lives of American citizens be materially improved? How will you or your family's lives be protected or fostered by sending tens of billions of dollars, now in excess of $100 billion, to the war in Ukraine, except for the tiny number of people who own huge amounts of stock in the weapons manufacturers who have done extremely well from this war? How have Americans benefited in any way? And the amazing thing, Tucker, is that you will never even hear any of these people, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Nancy, all of whom are in complete agreement on this, the leadership of both parties, even pretend that they have an answer to that question, because they don't. This week, millions of our own citizens, American citizens, are set to lose their Medicaid coverage, their health coverage when they and their kids get sick, because we can't find $1.7 billion to extend it. And yet we're about to send another $44.5 billion to fund this war in Ukraine. And Mitch McConnell says the number one goal of the...
What a right-winger he is. What a right-wing talking point that is. That people should have Medicaid coverage instead of billions going out the door for war. Now you say, well, Tucker's not sympathetic to that. Who cares? Who cares? This is the number one talk show in TV in its time slot. And there's that point being made. Whether Tucker is a good faith actor about, obviously, social democratic economic policy, not the point. Not the point. The point is, you turn on CNN, you're going to see Anderson Cooper and fucking Hillary Clinton gushing over what an inspiring speech it was. You turn to Fox News, this is what you're going to hear. So take it. Take it. Take a win where you can get it, because you can't get them fucking anywhere. You can't get them fucking anywhere. You mope around like a bunch of sad bastards. Oh, what's good? Oh, there's nobody sees the light. No, people understand. They're just not our natural allies necessarily, but it is out there. So take the win where you can get it. Let's just finish this up for a second.
Republican Party is to treat Russia as an enemy. Donald Trump won the primary in 2016 and 2020 based on the argument that Russia is not our enemy and we have no reason to treat it as such. So the entire question that needs to be asked is, who is this really benefiting? And the answer is everyone except the American people.
Mm-hmm. This makes me worried for America, because you can get a gap between the priorities of your leadership and the priorities of the population that is so vast that it makes the country unstable. I mean, the government does all kinds of dumb things, but for Mitch McConnell to come out and say, everyone agrees with me out there, this is the most important thing, when things are really starting to kind of teeter in this country, that's not an overstatement, that makes me think they're dangerously out of touch.
Look, we've been talking a lot about what seems like a kind of theoretical and remote story, which is the way in which big tech is censoring the flow of information in the United States and working in partnership with the U.S. security state to do it. Here's a concrete reason it's so disturbing, because, the emotions that Zelensky plays on when he comes in this theatrical way to the U.S. government and that the U.S. government plays on are very real. We like to think our government is doing good things to help people fight off tyranny. These are good emotions that the American government is manipulating. And one of the reasons they can do that so easily is because they control the flow of information and prevent anyone from asking these questions. People got banned from the internet for the kinds of dissent or debate that the Congress refuses to allow. That's the reason why Americans can get led down these paths so against their interests.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. I mean, at that point that he makes there is so good. We've been covering a lot of the Twitter files dumps, obviously, for exactly this reason. There are things you're not allowed to say about this war on an outlet like the one we're on now. Yep. That's why Jackson Hinkle got demonetized, because he took an overt position that YouTube did not allow him to take. Now, that, to be clear, he took it to an extreme that we do not feel like. Like, I want the Ukrainian people to live. Like, I have nothing against Ukrainian people. I want the Ukrainian people to survive, to live. What I want is peace, okay? I don't like that the war is happening, okay? But the fact of the matter is, when you stifle debate like that, that does help the government and the media manufacture consent. because you censor people outright who say the wrong thing, and you force other people to self-censor when they become afraid to say the wrong thing.
Sure.
And so these two things are very, very connected in that way. That's why we've given those Twitter files leaks as much coverage as we have.
Yes, at this point, we take for granted. We've been conditioned, which is really an incredible thing. We've been conditioned to think about what we say before we say it. Something that Americans really, for my entire life, that was not a thought that ever crossed my mind, that I had to be careful what I said because of the consequences. This is where, yes, we're only able to do this because of the technology, because of the internet. But at the same time, in some respects, this technology has been a trap for freedom of thought and freedom of communication, because it drew everything onto these platforms. And once they have you in here and they shut the door, now they got you. Now they can control you. You can't, and now you can't go back. You can't go back to the mimeograph machine. Right?
Can't go back to Mastodon.
Yeah. The whole world has moved on now. So you are forced to engage with people where they are, which is on these platforms, but now they can censor you in a way that they never could before. I never in my life until the last couple of years, really because of this show, I still don't really on my Facebook or on my social media or anything, but on this show, like that act of having to do what you would do in a totalitarian society or a police state. Can I say that? Should I say that? That's a foreign thought process to me until fairly recently. But that is, when we're doing this show, there are things we cannot say.
Right. Because if we do, we won't be able to see you guys anymore. So we'd rather be able to say what we can say. So at least we get something out there. Right. Right.
And, I mean, most of it we can. But hey, it's not an accident. We don't talk a lot about COVID. Like, why? Especially
it's not
now.
Even that we mean,
like,
it's not even on that subject that we necessarily mean anything that would get us in trouble. But as the left reckoning guys learned the hard way, that doesn't matter.
Right.
As these files have revealed, there are bots that will pick up. If you say too many words too close together, a robot will flag it anyway, and you can get fucked over that, right? And so, what Greenwald's saying is 100% true. So, Russell, you had a couple of things you wanted to tackle before we sign off related to this. So, go ahead. I'll be your wingman here. I'll queue up your exhibits.
Okay. We're gonna. Okay,
some you have a couple, right?
Right. Well, okay. So we
Do you not remember what you're gonna say? Could we?
No. I got confused about the flow. Okay, so
no, we're done. We got everything.
So this is a really good example of how we construct heroes. We construct narratives around people, because for everything they've done to manufacture Zelensky as a hero, you have more evidence on the other side that at best he's a complicated character, and at worst he's a criminal miscreant, really no better than the person he's fighting, only in more of an underdog position. So lest we forget, this was only a month ago that this dangerous nut job, in my opinion, was trying to gin up World War III. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah, so this is when, as I mentioned earlier, there were a missile hit Poland, and this did not come up in any of the media coverage. They just forgot that this guy, basically, whether he was consciously lying or whether he just was unsure and took it as an opportunity to make a statement that he thought the world would take at face value. Point is, there was a missile that hit Poland that he insisted, despite NATO's own refusal, pardon me, that it came from Russia.
Те, про що ми давно попереджали.
I'm sorry.
Сталося те, про що ми давно попереджали. Ми говорили про це. Терор не обмежується нашими державними кордонами. Вже поширюється на територію Молдови. А сьогодні російські ракети ударили по Польщі, по території нашої дружньої країни. Загинули люди. Прийміть, будь ласка, співчуття від усіх українських братів. Скільки разів Україна говорила про те, що нашою країною держава-терорист не обмежиться. Польща, держави Балтії – це питання часу, коли б російський терор пішов далі. Треба поставити на місце терориста.
There you go.
Okay, I have debated Ukrainians about this war, and that is exactly what they go to. You must support Ukraine because if you don't, Putin's going to march into Poland. He's going to march into Lithuania. He's going to take over the whole Eastern Bloc. Poland is a NATO country.
Right. That's the whole point of the war.
Right. He is not going to go into those countries. And to that, you'll get the response, well, once he takes over Ukraine, then he's going to have the power. Yes, I think it was Pliny, the Roman historian, who said the road to Europe lies through Ukraine. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Oh, yeah, once they get Ukraine, that's it. They're going to be unstoppable.
The core dispute of this is that the NATO status of Ukraine is what's in dispute, right? The whole reason why Putin felt it necessary to do this is because he was afraid that once Ukraine joined NATO, if they were going to, that he wouldn't have this option on the table, right? Now, again, we're not saying we approve of that, but we're saying that was his rationale. His rationale was based upon the fact that he can't touch a NATO country. And so the whole reason this war is happening is because Ukraine is not a NATO country. So the idea that he's going to go through Ukraine into NATO territory is preposterous, because that just cuts against his entire rationale in the first place.
Of course. Well, this is the point that I often make with people who are very into this war. These are the last people we can trust, and he proved it there. I understand you've been getting bullied by your bigger neighbor for centuries, and now you manage to get a bigger bully, or what you perceive as a bigger bully. Yeah, a bigger bully in terms of GDP, military size. You got a bigger bully to come fight this bully for you. But what you really want is to get the bigger bully to burn down the bully's house.
Right.
You want him out of the neighborhood. You want him gone, right? You want him eradicated. Now that you got the other bully to come this far, you're going to try to egg him on to go all the way. Hey, you know what he said about your mother? You better go over there and take care of him. You can't trust these people. They want to fucking start World War III because of their ancient grudge. Deserved. But that's beside the point. There's a whole planet here.
Yeah, it's not our grudge, right?
It's not our grudge. And there's a whole planet here that is not called Ukraine.
Right.
And World War III is not good for any of us, including the Ukrainians. Right. World War III is not to anybody's benefit. So you said, well, maybe he's not lying. No, he's lying, because he kept doubling down on it, even as all the NATO countries are saying, yeah, no, that's not what happened. And he stuck to his guns.
What I meant by he's not lying, maybe I shouldn't have said that. He was definitely lying about how certain he was, right? Well, in that way, yes.
At the beginning, he might have been on the fence, but as he kept doubling down, no, he knew. But he just kept doubling down.
NATO said it themselves. All the media outlets, all the reputable media outlets said it themselves, that it was not a Russian missile.
All the shit lib outlets in good standing.
They all said it, right? We're not spreading any theories here. We're just, he's the one spreading the theories.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. So now let's take a look at some of the news coverage on Zelensky before we decided that we had to manufacture him as a hero. Pull up some of my coverage here. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so here we go. All right. Wow. Zelensky, who took over what was, to be fair, the most corrupt nation in Europe already, but he's supposed to be the reformer, right? So you had the Pandora Papers, which revealed a lot of offshore accounts of various oligarchs, business leaders, politicians. So here's your hero here. The leaked documents suggest he had or has a previously undisclosed stake in an offshore company, which he appears to have secretly transferred to a friend weeks before winning the presidential vote. Zelensky has not commented on the claim, because, fuck you, go get your fucking shine box. Despite extensive attempts by The Guardian and its media partners to reach him. His spokesperson, Sergei Nikiforov, I'm sure I massacred that, messaged, "Won't be an answer." Gotta love that. Now, remember, this was before the war broke out, back when you could tell the truth about Zelensky. You would never see an article like this from The Guardian now.
Right.
The files reveal Zelensky participated in a sprawling network of offshore companies co-owned with his longtime friends and TV business partners. They include Sergei Shafir, who produced Zelensky's hit shows, and Shafir's older brother Boris, who wrote the scripts. Another member of the consortium is Ivan Bakanov, a childhood friend. Bakanov was general director of Zelensky's production studio. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. All are associated with Zelensky's hometown in southern Ukraine. I'm skipping that too. After winning power, this is where it gets interesting. Zelensky brought these close allies into government. Bakanov became head of Ukraine's SBU security agency. Zelensky made Shafir his first assistant, an unpaid role that involves handling the president's daily schedule. A fourth member of this close-knit group is a film director and Kvartal 95 producer. Okay, so do you understand what happened here? Basically, they took a production house and they're running a country with it. And that's who we're giving this money to. This basically, you took the people who produced Will and Grace and you put them in charge of a country and you gave them billions of dollars to fight a nuclear-armed superpower.
At least they're woke.
At least they're woke, yeah. I picked the woke one. Okay, yeah. So I just switched tabs. Did it switch tabs on you?
You gotta.
I gotta do it individually. Okay, so it's well known, I think, particularly to our viewers, the Nazi problem, shall we say, in Ukraine, going all the way back to World War II. But let's take a look at who's fighting over there now. And I'm not talking about the Azov battalion. So this is from the Gray Zone. Esha Krishna Swamy wrote the article. Once condemned by Ukrainian officials and imprisoned for sadistic torture and the rape of minors, leaders of the notorious Tornado Battalion are free under Zelensky's orders. After banning virtually his entire political opposition, that's another thing nobody ever wants to talk about, publishing a blacklist of foreign journalists and academics, which my friend Roger Waters is on, by the way, whose concert shirt I'm wearing right now, and academics accused of advancing Russian propaganda and ramming through a law exempting 70% of Ukrainians from workplace protections. Ukrainian President Zelensky is freed from prison fascist militants convicted of some of the most heinous crimes the country has seen since World War II. According to a July 11th report in Ukrainian media, Ruslan Onashenko, commander of the now disbanded Tornado Battalion, was freed as part of President Zelensky's scheme to release prisoners with combat experience. Along with an unwavering commitment to fascism, Onashenko is known as a psychopathic sadist who was involved in sexually assaulting children,
that's what I was
brutally torturing prisoners, and murder.
Yeah.
Well, but it's not the P word, so I think we can get away with it.
Yeah, are you sure about that?
I hope not. Onashenko's release follows a February 27th order by Zelensky to free other convicted former Tornado members like Daniil Mujahed Lyashuk, a fanatic from Belarus who has openly emulated ISIS and boasted of torturing captives for sheer enjoyment. According to Zelensky's decree, prisoners with combat experience would be allowed to compensate for their guilt by fighting in the hottest spots. So meet your allies, ladies and gentlemen. These are the people we are funding in this war.
All right, give me the screen share back. Cut yours out. I want my screen share back. Give it to me.
You got it.
Over.
You got it.
No, the reason why this is
fuck you, Keaton.
The reason why I thought that passage was relevant is because Zelensky did make this point about the Russians last night in his speech. He says the Russians' tactic is primitive. They burn down and destroy everything they see. They sent thugs to the front lines. They sent convicts to the war. They threw everything against us. So he was trying to draw a distinction between the purity of his armed forces versus the thugs that, you know, Putin is setting free on them. And this is the core thing. I mean, look, this is
one of these guys, there's a photo, if you follow the link, one of these guys literally has a swastika tattoo on his ass. Literally.
I mean, look, this is what the Rob Reiners of the world, this is what a lot of the liberals, this is at the core of a lot of why they are so easily propagandized into accepting all of these kinds of narratives, is because they are so emotionally immature that they are unable to, and they are really afraid to reckon with a world in which there are no heroes in high places, right? So the fact that Putin is this horrible villain means that Zelensky must be the pure hero. He must be the white knight. He must be good. Right? And if there are no good people in high places, that's a pretty bleak world, right? And that's not a world that a lot of these people have the emotional fortitude to actually reckon with and look at in an honest way. And so the fact that Putin is sending these horrible people, he's, letting his convicts out to go fight means, well, Zelensky, he must not be doing that, right? Because there has to be an opposite to every evil. If there is not, that means you're just left with a very dark world run by gangsters and thugs and murderers, which is pretty close to the world that we actually have. And that's very scary. That's why they won't criticize Joe Biden, right? That's why the Biden crime bill was memory hold. Because if Trump is the racist, then Biden must be the anti-racist. Otherwise, they're both racists. And if America has a presidential race between two races, then what does that say about our country? That says that we're a failed state, right? I mean, we're not living up to this, shining city on the hill that we're supposed to be. Right. And so I think that's where a lot of that comes from. We missed a couple of these super chats earlier. I'm sorry, guys, but we will get to them. With the omnibus imminent, we will have spent more in the military aid on Ukraine than in the whole of Afghanistan, not including personal aid. Insane. It is insane, Axel. Thank you very much for the $5, my friend. Appreciate that. And Emoji, haven't seen you here in a while, Emoji, but thanks for coming back. And thank you for the donation. Any animators out there, an edited version of the Left versus Liberalism podcast. Oh, really? So you guys are going to animate that for us? Well, that's a tall order, but thank you.
That would be cool.
Could be worthwhile, though some people are ready to abandon the left label. Yeah, I just put that one out there because we've had some comments on it. And so rather than talk about the fact that I did a podcast 2 years ago, now anybody who drops a comment on that, I can just send them a link and say, here, watch this, right? That's why I put that out. And, we had a decent audience for that last night, so I'm glad people enjoyed that one. All right, that's our show, is it not? There we go. All right, listen, guys, this is our last show before Christmas, so we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. We will be off Christmas Day, obviously. That's a Sunday. We usually live stream Sundays. We will be back, though, next week. This is our last time seeing you before Christmas, unless, of course, you should want to tune in to the Extra Bulla show tomorrow. They're doing a Festivus party that's going all night, I guess, and my wife and I will do a pop-in, so we will appear on that. Russell, I guess you'll do a pop-in, too. I got to send you the invite link to that once they send it to me.
I'll be home late. I'm working double tomorrow.
Yeah, we're not going to stay. We're not going to stay too long, but we will pop in at a certain point. So maybe we'll see you guys there. Keep your eye out for that. That's going to be on the Indie News Network and the Extra Bulla YouTube channel. And I think that's everything we got.
A little more time to throw some Hanukkah gelt.
That's true. That's true.
Christmas cash.
Yeah,
only a few minutes left for that.
Exactly.
You know you're gonna feel bad rocking around that tree. Like, man, I should have thrown them more super chats. Like they did that great Union show.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Extra Bulla says, "Woohoo! 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern." All right. Well, we will check in.
Oh yeah, I'll be home. I'll be home. Like, yeah, in that range.
Yep. All right. So we will go. And Extra Bulla says, "Russell, follow me on Twitter. You big lug. Follow me on Twitter."
All right.
Yo, Extra Bulla, do you have a link to that we could put up now? If you have a link to that, put it in the chat right now because you're still here and we got some people asking for a link. So if you have a link, just throw that up in the chat here. This way people know where to find that. But that'll be, like I said, up here on YouTube. You can look up Extra Bulla, his YouTube channel. But hopefully he'll post a link here in just a moment. But all right, that's our show. We want to thank our two guests, Ike and Chris. They were fantastic, and we hope you guys had a good time, and we hope you guys have a very, very Merry Christmas. We will see you back here on our channel next week. And if you want to stop by for some Festivus fun, go to the Extra Bulla YouTube channel tomorrow between 8 and 10, and we'll be stopping by, and they'll have some other really fun guests there as well. Thank you guys very much. Be safe. Be well. Merry Christmas. We'll see you all next time.
Please clap.